Let's get started, Sarah, because DD Geopolitics has been covering the situation with regard to Yemen and Ansar Allah and the US UK bombing campaign, a launch to war that, depending on where you lived, whether it was late Thursday or early Friday morning, January 11th and 12th, regardless of where you lived, it was happening and it is still happening. Reports from, I know you have colleagues, The Cradle, a great source of information on Middle East affairs, are all reporting now that Sana'a is under fire as we are speaking. But Sarah, could you just begin talking about what has happened here? What, uh, how did this all occur? Why is it that the United States, despite, and I'm going to pull some of these things up, despite all of Blinken was just in the Middle East. He was just traversing Saudi Arabia. He was in the United Arab Emirates. He visited Israel. He was everywhere in the Middle East, claiming to be de-escalating the situation. While there was a case, an ICJ case against Israel, led by South Africa, to enforce the genocide conventions, all of this was going on, and then there was bombs dropping on Yemen. So how did this happen, Sarah? And what's going on?
Well, we have Ansarallah, who is now the Yemeni Armed Forces, who has made a promise from the get-go that they will be restricting the movement of ships that are supporting the genocide in Palestine. I mean, this isn't rocket science. We know that they have a well funded and well armed arsenal, and they did just that. They they seized ships, they attacked ships, they kept their promises. They showed that they would let China and Russia and other, I think Indonesia and Malaysia to come through, and they had no issues coming through Bab el Mandeb or the Red Sea. They've also had some assistance from Somali pirates, which I think they were just kind of taking advantage of the situation, but they still helped out. And ships are stuck kind of going around the Cape of Good Hope. So we do see that. We know that probably could have continued had it not affected shipping lanes so drastically for the EU, Israel, and for the United States. So we know what the United States military is for. It's to protect financial interests. So I guess it came to the point where enough was enough. And they did start bombing Yemen. But the thing about the West is that they don't really understand an enemy like Yemen or Yemenis. And this is why they, I believe it was Southfront who said the United States and the UK have started another unwinnable war with Yemen. You can't beat Yemen. They didn't beat Yemen throughout the entire civil war. They still can't beat Yemen. And so I think that this is kind of silly. I think it looks silly, but yeah. So they're bombing right now, international airport, their Ansar Yemeni Armed Forces base close to the airport, claiming that they're only hitting out, radar stations and drone landing sites and takeoff sites. So as of right now, they think that we are being told they're just hitting military targets, and that, as far as I can confirm from our correspondent in Sana'a, is that that's the case. Really is, yeah.
Yes. Now, a lot of I think astute observers have been making this case. I was pulling up Antony Blinken right before his trip and during his trip. The message was that the United States was trying to de-escalate or avoid a broader war through this trip, which was seen as a market failure by anyone paying attention, really. But at the same time, you have now bombs being dropped. You have a direct, and in my estimation, correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, this is a US UK led bombing campaign, a war that directly targets another state. They claim it's Ansar Allah separate, Yemen and the Yemen, just like we do with China, with Russia, with Syria, etc. They say, oh well, it's not the Yemeni people, it's not the Yemeni government, it's Ansar Allah.
It's quite literally the Yemeni people. I mean, they say the Houthis to minimize it. And to your listeners and to mine as well, please stop saying Houthis. That's not, please don't refer to them as such. They are Ansarallah or the Yemeni armed forces. Using the term Houthis is very reductive. The Houthis is only one group that was at one point deemed a terrorist group. So that's why they kind of keep utilizing that name to kind of reconjure up those images of they're no longer on the terrorist watch list or any of that stuff, but they were in the past, and that's why they kind of use that name to demonize them. I mean, we saw 5 million men march today in Sana'a in the entire square. So to say that it's just the Ansarallah or just the Houthis is so far off the mark. And I believe that this is really a PR disaster, because most of the reactions that I saw were more along the lines of, you're bombing a place and a place that's been a silent genocide for almost a decade, that's trying to stop another genocide. It just kind of turned into like it was like, what's happening? How do you bomb rebel? That's literally what's happening.
Yeah, and I want to pull up, actually, now that you bring up, there's so many incredible images of the streets of especially the capital, Sana'a. Here is what you published on DD Geopolitics. A massive, massive rally. So I don't speak, but you translated, "We do not care, make it a world war." That doesn't sound like, Sarah, one, it doesn't sound like a people that is separate from Ansarallah, who have been very steadfast in not only rejecting the U.S. and U.K.'s claims of defense here, but also saying that they're going to keep doing what they're doing, which is a solidarity blockade for Gaza against Israeli apartheid and genocide. But also here, they don't seem like a people that's afraid also of what the United States and the UK have to offer.
Not at all. I mean, I think that they actually stepped up to the challenge. If you saw what happened in the beginning, Yemeni armed forces were, or just the Yemeni people, were some of the first people to react. They went right down to the square. I think on October 8th, they were in the square with millions of men, because obviously the men are the one that go protesting in full traditional regalia with jambayas and all of that stuff. And you know, they were marching to the borders telling Saudi Arabia, open the border, we'll walk there. Like, these are very serious people with nothing left to lose. They're not called the original Arabs for no reason. They're an honorable warrior class of people, and that's how they function, and that's how they view things. And that's why the West is not ready to deal with an enemy like this. They don't understand an enemy that says it's honorable to die. We you know, even, and my colleagues in Yemen aren't even militant. They're not part of the Yemeni armed forces. They actually worked for the British before the British left. So they're quite like westernized and they speak great English, but even they are saying like, it's an honor to take the attention off of Gaza and put it on us from the West. It's an honor to kind of martyr ourselves. It's an honor. And you know, Allah we would be more embarrassed if we didn't do this. Allah would never forgive us. We would never forgive ourselves. I believe that he said, you know, anything that we can do to take the attention off of Gaza, he said, and if they take the bombs from Gaza and drop them on us, then we have done what we set out to do. And that's what they've been trying to do, not only to support Palestine and to walk there literally with Saudi not opening the borders, but when they saw that that wasn't an option, they decided to go with what resources they did have, which was controlling those sea routes, which was incredible. And you can't deter them. That's the thing. And that's kind of also this terrifying part, because you can destroy the radar stations, you can destroy the air bases. That's not going to deter them from controlling Bab el Mandeb, which coincidentally means the gate of lamentation, and controlling the Red Sea. As we saw today with they went and drove to the square while they were being bombed. Like, this is not a people that Americans can really wrap their minds around. It's just not a foe that you can fight.
Mm. Yes, and I want to now pull up, I showed the map of where the strikes were occurring, but now we can talk a little bit about the fallout of these strikes. There's been a lot of concern about a regional war. There's also a lot of concern about U.S. leadership as a whole over this operation, its effectiveness, and its consequences. Here, Sputnik reports that former Pentagon senior security policy analyst Michael Maloof believes that Blinken is feckless and that his actions fail to resolve the Middle East crisis. The United States could slip into a war, he said, noting that U.S. actions emboldened Israel and prompted to escalate in the Gaza Strip. What could stop it is if the United States stops all of its exports of munitions to Israel at this point, because otherwise you're feeding the fire here. We're pouring more gasoline on the fire. He also observed that the recent visits to the Middle East by the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken were useless, seeing how the Houthis, or Ansar Allah, we should more correctly call, continued their attacks on shipping lanes in the Red Sea. Beyond that, he's feckless, he's ineffective, and he's very timid and meek. He's not strong at all. And for that matter, he's not doing anything that brings about or shows any ability to bring these sides together. All he's doing is spending, wasting money, traveling around, doing nothing. He's totally useless. Now, Sarah, your thoughts on that, but also counterpoint. Was his trip to the Middle East just a prelude to these strikes and this escalation? Because from Operation Prosperity Guardian, what is now Toothless, because we now know that it's the United States and the UK basically doing all the work. What do you make of these statements alongside the fact that this visit literally coincided with both the ICJ case against Israel and now the bombing campaign happening all at the same time?
I agree. I think that it was kind of testing out the temperature of each kind of country to see where they were at on the ICJ, as well as bombing Yemen, which most of the countries were against Israel in both instances. And I think only the UAE and Bahrain opened up their airspace, which I thought was quite significant to sort of point out. People say like, oh, it was a disaster. I think that kind of Blinken's trip went as expected. I mean, it's right now everything is disastrous for Israel. Their PR has fallen apart, with Prosperity Guardian falling apart like within the first 24 hours. That was also a huge nail in the coffin. It really told, Britain and the United States, you're on your own here. What are you willing to risk? And, they just launched some fighters off of a carrier and struck. They said they launched 100 missiles. The Yemenis say, 5 people were martyred. Like nothing of value was really lost. Like they were like, I think they said they bombed the same sites they bombed in 2015. Who cares? Like they're already been bombed. So I really think his trip was to gauge public opinion in the Arab countries. And I think that they're really realizing that they're even losing the people that they thought they could count on. I mean, if they're only down to UAE and Bahrain, out of all of those states, they're not in a very good place. Even Djibouti refused, which is a place that has 9 foreign bases inside of it. And they said, we're not participating in this. We're not opening up our airspace to this. So I think that it's a disaster in that sense, where now they're seeing like, wow, even the people that we used to kind of be able to extort into doing our bidding are able to say no. And I think that's a testament to not only the strength of Ansarallah, but the fact that Russia is kicking ass in Ukraine. Like nobody takes the West seriously anymore. It's just they've pretty much lost. And by a kind of tethering, to use a word that Haas uses, and I love it, to tethering themselves to Israel, this is a sinking ship. So I think that it was really to gauge public opinion. And then I really do think that he probably came to the realization that there's no saving public opinion. Like, F it, we might as well just do it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. When looking at these strikes too, while there obviously is a targeting of so-called military positions, installations, etc., what is the end game here? Because on the one hand, you have the United States and really the entire West, its vassals, claiming they don't want escalation. They don't want a wider war. And on the other hand, they're conducting these strikes knowing full well, actually, there is not uh, really unnamed Pentagon official or a mainstream media report that you can read across the West that doesn't say Ansar Allah is going to continue what it is doing. It is not going to stop its blockade, its solidarity blockade in the Red Sea. So then why? Is it just that there's no more, there really aren't any other options? Or does the United States and I guess the UK, following along like the good puppy that it is, is
Actually,
it
I've
like, is there
heard
something?
the opposite. I heard Britain kind of headed this along. It was Rishi Sunak who actually had the meeting first. I was talking to a few Brits and a politician in Germany yesterday, and they said, "Oh, this was a British initiative," which is hilarious to me. And um, kind of, I think that Yemen is more of a British kind of AOR than the United States in general. So I think maybe they're kind of heading up this sort of. But like you said, this isn't a victory. In fact, the Yemenis that I spoke to said we won, and I said, "Well, what does that mean?" And they said, "We already got your attention and got you to bomb us. You lost." So I'm not really sure, like what I'm not really sure what the plan is. You bombed the airports, you bombed the radar station. They said the answer all already said we have all of our ammunition. You didn't hit any ammo depots. And today there was an incident where they tried to strike a ship again. So like there's nothing's like this isn't changing anything.
Yeah, certainly not changing anything. And there are consequences, though. What's interesting is what you said is that we've won. You're hearing out of Yemen that they've already won. And I was speaking earlier is that they're not fighting the kind of war that the United States is used to fighting. This is something that I think Gaza has taught us a lot now in the last couple months, despite the massive casualties. We're not really seeing the Israelis marching in a confident lockstep victory with their heads held high. We're seeing actually the exact opposite in Gaza. And with Yemen, I mean, how many years was it that the US backed Saudi coalition found themselves kind of, you know, sh- running around with their heads cut off like chickens there, just killing everything in sight and trying to starve the entire population while still not able to affect real political change, the kind of change that they sought to complete.
They want, sanctions that pressure populations into regime change. They want color revolutions. They want, the thing about it is that Arabs are not Europeans. They don't forget history as quickly as Europeans do. They don't want another Arab Spring. They don't want more color revolutions. They know what's at stake. For a Palestinian family, the birth of a child is an act of resistance. That's just them breathing every day. So for them, it's like me waking up tomorrow, I've already defeated you because your entire line is to come and kill me, and I'm still here. So that's why they say we've won already. We've told you we are to you we are nothing. And we've gotten your attention so much that you came to bomb us, and we're still here. So and that's just not a concept that a Westerner can really understand, because we fight conventional wars, we fight economical wars, we fight wars on the ground. We see a bomb, if you die from the bomb, you lost. To the Yemeni, if they die from an American bomb, that's an honor. They're honored to have died under that shelling and not another a Muslim or another Arab. Like that's just a foe that they're not ready to understand, and that's why these things aren't a deterrent. Though you'll probably see more people coming to support Yemen. The Iran has said that they support Yemen. The Iraqi resistance supports Yemen. The Syrian Arab Army supports Yemen, and these are all people that have been kind of subjugated by the United States, kind of coming together.
Yeah, and it reminds me of, Ho Chi Minh said, if you kill 10, 15, 100 of us, there will be, if we just get 1 to 10 of you, we're still going to win because there will be many, 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 many more behind us that will follow and take our place. Low-key says this in his music, the great song "A Million," where he says that when one is killed, a million more rise behind us, and that's how it's actually shaped up to be in Yemen. And when there is this massive slaughter, this invasion, people come together even further. Could you talk about the history here? Like, how did this happen for the United States and the UK, and of course, all of the forces of Saudi Arabia that really wanted Yemen to remain a client, a divided client state? How did this happen? How did Ansar Allah get off the ground? What's your understanding?
Well, the Houthis got absorbed. The Houthis are a group that are inside of Ansarallah. So, and when Ansarallah and the Houthis were they were legitimized through the Yemeni people and the eviction of the British. So, and then they kind of became the Yemeni armed forces and the government. But the reason why, again, why these countries aren't able to really get a full foothold in there is because their conventional ways of working don't work. And Yemenis aren't distracted by the things that we're distracted by technology, just worldly issues. They're focused on their destiny. They're focused on getting out from behind the yoke of the West and rising above that. And exactly what you said, when you kill one, you create 15, you create 20. I think that somebody in your chat is really falling in love with me. That's kind of nice, but but I have always had a really, really strong or really, really soft spot for Yemen. They have been one of the most subjugated populations in the world, the greatest humanitarian crisis in modern history, and that is ahead of Palestine. And that's why it's so important to recognize these people. They are brave people, they are warrior people, they are traditional people, and they're some of the most politically educated people that I've ever met. We talked to Palestinians are some of the most literate people in the world. Yeah. These are people that understand geopolitics. They understand what's going to happen. What happens if the United States wins this? What's the consequence of that? What happens if we get a one-state solution in Palestine? Arabs are very in tune with something like that. They understand the repercussions, where a Westerner is like, bomb the shit out of them. And then you're like, and then what? And then they're like, well, bomb them. So for a Yemeni or an Arab, other Arabs, it's the end that's justifying the means, and they're fine with however they get there.
Thank you for tuning in to my latest video. I appreciate all of your support. This channel, however, needs your help. I am seeking to make this channel more sustainable in the long term and upgrade necessary equipment to ensure that this work continues onward and makes progress to give you all of the geopolitical analysis that you all deserve. For that reason, I'm asking you to become a member of my Patreon community at patreon.com/DannyHaiFong. You can find that link in the video description or in the pinned comment below. For whatever amount you choose to give, just know you are supporting independent media that you can't find anywhere else. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the next video.